Much lower today. This is really strange. What's happened? Oh, I see. Somebody knocked the camera. So unprofessional. Good morning, and welcome to Backchannel on this is it Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday? Might be Friday afternoon. I'm not sure. I'm repositioning everything because everything was in the wrong place for a different show. And today it's this show. I have tea. Oh, it's Wednesday the 29th. I see now. It's all starting to come together. I'm starting to kind of realize, where it's at. Because the problem is the period between Christmas and New Year is like no man's land. Nobody really knows what day it is, what's happening, whether or not you can park anywhere, whether or not you're allowed to, spend time at work, or if you're supposed to stay home. Do you see what I mean? There's a lot of differences between the pre-Christmas period, the actual Christmas day, and then everything that goes between that and New Year. It's almost like, it's hard to describe, but I would say it's almost like the time that time forgot. Does that make sense? You know what I mean. The time that time forgot. A bit of a rush this morning. Lots happening here, I was freezing. It's freezing here on the West Coast. And I think the problem with that is that it takes time for your body and your brain and your everything to catch up. And I'm not used to it anymore. I used to be used to it when I lived in England. Now I live in Los Angeles. I'm just used to heat. And unfortunately, it's currently freezing. Anyway, it's not your problem. You've got your own business to worry about. If you want to get in touch with Backchannel, then you just do that in the usual way. You can message, you can chat, you can use backchannel.tv. You can even leave a review there these days. I mean, that's like a new thing and very exciting. This is the only place you can listen to, watch, and chat with hosts of live shows right here on your device. And I really hope that you had a great Christmas. I hope you're looking forward to New Year. And I really hope that you spend most of it with Backchannel. I had a few days off, so I'm kind of, raring to go, albeit a little, flummoxed. So today's topics, we're going to look at space exploration and ask, is it a waste of time or indeed a waste of space? Thank you, Carla. We take a look at 20-something tech billionaire from Florida, Austin Russell, as he launches his new charitable fund. Also, what's Ron up to now? As always, we'll keep an eye on Florida's Ron Desantis, as he just makes stuff up. And we're going to look back on the life of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the South African social rights activist. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1983 with his work fighting apartheid in South Africa. He passed away on Sunday, and I was genuinely sad about this because I think a lot of people have, it's not exclusive to me, had a bit of a soft spot for the Tutu. Do you know what I mean? There's something about him. I think it was his infectious laugh. Maybe he didn't really see. I felt like when he was around people, he actually looked into their souls. He didn't see people's faces, he didn't see the skin, the tone, the creed. He actually looked into people's souls. And I've always had great respect for people that do that. So, that's right. He was a very big, Carla's just reminded me, he was a very big supporter of LGBTQ+, although it was probably just LGBT when he was doing it. Q and plus have been added, and hopefully in a few years' time we'll have even more letters attached to that. So I kind of get the feeling that there will be a bit of a chasm left by the work of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and I don't know enough about the people that have taken his roles on, in his world. But it'll be very interesting to do that. I've got a new microphone today. This is obviously a big deal. It's actually, I used to have this microphone years ago, and I sold it in order to get the grey one. But I just bought it back again. I mean, it's not the exact same one. It's obviously a different one from the same factory. So we'll see how different this is, because I was worried the other one sounded a little bit flat. This one's got a bit more punch, Good morning to you if you're just joining the show. Lots of people climbing on already. My Deal Berry has joined us. Thank you very much from Alabama for joining the show this morning. We're going to look through the morning papers in just a second and kind of see what's happening. Check out the stories making the headlines. We're going to start with the Wall Street Journal today because, let me just adjust this earpiece because it's pulling on my neck. I feel like Nothing worse than having someone pull on your neck. Oh, I see. I attached the wrong bit to the wrong bit. There we go. Former Afghan female troops hide from Taliban to survive is the headline on the front of the Wall Street Journal. This is 26-year-old Samima, formerly in the Afghan Air Force, is in hiding after the Taliban showed up at her parents' home asking for people who served in the armed forces. Women were in the military. Women who were in the military are among the most vulnerable left behind. Hello to Doug. Thank you for joining us this morning. And my deal Berry says, hello. Well, hello. I love your name. It's very good. I hope you got a good deal on that, Berry. Also on the front of the Wall Street Journal this morning, states hold off on strict COVID-19 measures. It says despite surging cases, governors cite vaccines and other tools to keep local activity humming. Well, do you know, this is very interesting. It's something I do want to talk about. As you know, the CDC changed the rules on Monday for isolation from 10 days to 5 days. I mean, they halved it. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, what's the real reason behind this? Now, you only have to look around and look to the airlines, because really this all stems from the airlines complaining that they're losing all their staff because of the isolation, the quarantine time. And so as not to dent the economy, so as not to kind of cause a problem for the economy and keep everything moving, they've reduced the quarantine period. And I'll be honest with you, it's going to bite them in the bum. This is going to have a knock-on effect. My prediction is everyone is going to get Omicron. Everyone. I know so many people that have it. My brother has it. I went to a super spreader party last night, so I've probably got it. I mean, we checked everybody. We tested everybody and everyone's triple vaccinated. But the thing is, it's airborne. We all probably got it, which is not much fun. So my feeling is there could be an upside to Omicron. And that is that if everybody gets it, it goes from being a pandemic to endemic. And that could end the pandemic. That's my feeling. This could be the thing that ends the pandemic. Everybody gets this. Huge immunity. I know I'm starting to sound like a conspiracy theorist, and I don't know how much science there is to this, but if you think about it, it's not milder. It's only milder for people who are vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, it's just as deadly as Delta or anything else. But if everybody gets this, in a mild form or an asymptomatic form or even a not very nice form. I mean, I have a friend in London who has it very bad at the moment. He's triple vaccinated and he's really suffering with it. I know so many people. My brother had it for, 2 weeks ago. And yet there are governors in some counties, some states, who are still denying that there's a problem. It says many governors who are grappling with the spreading Omicron variant are applying a lighter touch than during previous COVID-19 surges, as they're armed with more tools and increasingly mindful of the economic harm caused by sweeping restrictions. Many decision makers said they're trying to avoid strict measures and are instead encouraging vaccinations and increasing capacity for testing and closely watching factors, such as hospital administrations. I'm trying to build long-term solutions, New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu, Republican, said on Tuesday, adding he expects the pandemic might be a part of life for a while. So the answer is not to turn things on and off as things surge or don't surge. We have the tools to manage this. A lot of them have said this. But I don't know, I don't know. Stacey, good morning. Thank you. Hope you had a nice Christmas. Welcome back. She says, are you ready for lunch with me? Oh, I am ready. If only I was having lunch too. Have some tea. And it's not very warm anymore, so I'm going to have to drink it. I apologize. Biden eyes top pick for top Fed post. Why doesn't he just pick someone to do Louis DeJoy's job? I mean, why do we still have the same Postmaster General who was caught up in that entire mail-in voting scandal? I don't understand that. President Biden... Oh, look, it's what my mum got me for Christmas. Carla, you're going to love this. I haven't unboxed it yet. This is what we call a cough button. My mum, for Christmas, got me a cough button. And basically, the cough button, I'll plug it in down here. And it means that if I need to clear my throat like I just did, I can just depress the top button for a second, and it cuts the mic silently, mutes it, so that I can cough, clear my throat without you having to hear it. Isn't my mum amazing? It's called a Cough Blocks, this product. Momentary mute switch. So it doesn't click in. You just, as long as your finger's on it, it mutes you, and then you can release. I'm really excited to plug it in. The cough blocks. Yeah, I'll show it to you in a little bit more. There it is. Isn't that amazing? Bless my mum. Maybe she thinks I'm going to get coronavirus. Is conscious of the fact that I might need to lean on the button a little bit. Anyway, that's a little bit of kit that I'm looking forward to. I might just stick it there. Look, it fits. Oh no, it doesn't, because it's going to have wires in the end. Anyway, it's not your problem. But I'm just saying it's going to be really, really fun. I'll be coughing all the time, and you'll never know. You'll be like, that guy coughs in silence. It's amazing. It's like a superhero property. The silent cougher, they'll call me. So it's a very cute little gift. Very perfect Christmas stocking filler for announcers. President Biden is considering Sarah Bloom Raskin for a top role at the Federal Reserve as part of a slate of 3 nominees for central bank board seats, according to people familiar with the matter. The administration is eyeing Ms. Rankin, former Fed governor and one-time Treasury Department official, to become... See, I should have pressed the button just then. I can't press it, it's not plugged in. I think I can press M for mute, but you have to be on the active window, and it's a whole faff, you know. She's to become the central bank's vice chairwoman of supervision, the government's most influential overseer of the U.S. banking system. Mr. Biden's also considering 2 economists for other Fed board seats that will soon be vacant. Lisa Cook, professor of economics and international relations at Michigan State University, and Philip Jefferson, a professor and administrator at Davidson College in North Carolina. Isn't Sarah Bloom Raskin the wife of Senator Raskin? I think so. He's on the January 6th committee. I think that's the case. He's had a lot of tragedy. I mean, if they are indeed together, then they've had a lot of tragedy. But it's it's very interesting. Didn't he lose a child recently, and then went straight back to work? I think so. But it says that Ms. Raskin's nomination could mollify progressive Democrats, some of whom opposed to Mr. Biden's decision in November to offer a second term to Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, a Republican first choice of the top job by former President Donald Trump. They've called for the Fed to take a tougher stance in regulating big banks and a bolder approach in addressing financial risks posed by climate change. That was a year. Was that a year ago? They lost us. Yeah, Sarah Raskin is Senator Raskin's wife, and they lost a 25-year-old son on New Year's Eve, and he was. Oh, that's right. Yeah, he had mental health problems. It's very interesting, isn't it? That I think about this a lot as a parent. I think about, and especially with this story about the shooting a couple of days ago in North Hollywood. A 14-year-old girl was shopping for a dress for her 15th birthday with her mum in a store. They were just changing in a cubicle, and the police burst in to apprehend somebody else who was just doing a minor thing. They ended up shooting this guy, executing him, and the bullet ricocheted through the wall and killed the 15-year-old girl who was trying on a dress. The LAPD. The LAPD have executed 18 people this year. People that didn't do a crime or didn't do anything that was worthy of being murdered. They murdered 18 people this year. And yesterday I had to watch a video of this little girl's mum saying she died in my arms. And they're both Latin American, these families. And so the Latin American community has had this huge, there's been huge pushback against police brutality. In addition to the African American community pushing back against police brutality. You don't hear the white Caucasian community pushing back against police brutality in the same way, do you? It's all so screwed up, and it's very, very sad, and I feel very sad about this girl because she was, quite, to all intents and purposes, just an innocent bystander. She didn't even know what was going on. She was trying on a dress in a cubicle with her mum. The mindset of a police department that goes into a store because somebody is, assaulting somebody and thinks they can draw weapons. You don't shoot people. You just don't. If a terrorist is trying to commit a terrorist act and trying to blow up a shopping center and is standing there with a vest on or with a firearm, then sure, get your guns out. But if you're called to a shop because someone is assaulting someone, probably over the, goods or something, just jump on them. Just shout at them. Don't execute them. And the crazy thing is, it's like, the way that the LAPD talk about it, they were like, well, we were going in to kill this other guy, and it was an accident that it went through the... And it's like, you shouldn't have been killing the other guy. You shouldn't have even been killing the baddie. Just because someone is so desperate that they need to behave in that way, whether because they're poor or because they have mental health issues, they don't deserve to be executed. And yet this is the standard practice, despite all of these de-escalation training courses and despite firearms training. I mean, look at Kerry what's-her-name, the lady the policewoman who was supposed to reach for her taser and ended up reaching for a gun and kills the guy as he's driving off. You shouldn't have even tased him. Just let him go. Just take a photograph of his license plate and pick him up later. This desire by uniformed officers, shoot to kill policy. It is so... It's totalitarianism. It's a police state. And it has no place in a democratic society. But we're not a democratic society anymore, so it kind of doesn't matter, I guess, does it? I have a theory on this. Carl, I have a great theory on this. They're talking about like the midterms in 2022 and the next general election in 2024. They can't do it. You can't have an election in 2024. It's not possible. There's no system now to facilitate an election in 2024. So why is everyone talking about having one? You can't have one. This is my new theory. I think it's quite a good one. We need to start talking in terms of the fact that we can't have an election in 2024. Because all of these states that have... It's 41 states now that have put in place... 41 out of 50 states have put in place systems to rig the vote so that Republicans will win. They've already done it. 41 states. The Guardian did a whole spread about it the other day. Full analysis. And Kamala Harris was interviewed on Face the Nation the other day with Margaret Brennan. And she said, there's 18 states that have done this. And I was thinking, 18 states? There's not 18 states. There's 41 states that have done this. And it's her job. It's Kamala Harris's job. She's taken on voting rights. That's her role. She said she asked for it. She actually asked Biden if she could do this job. And yet she's like out by like 23 states. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? That's the world that we're living in now. So my new position on this whole conversation is that we cannot have an election in 2024. Can't have it because there's no system to have an election, because there's already been these, through the state legislatures, procedures put in place to rig the election. And unless it's completely fair and completely free, I don't mind if Republicans win, but it has to be an even playing field. And it's already been rigged in 41 states. So you can't have an election until everybody gets their fair shot. Just a thought. Spread the word. Let's have a look at all of your messages here. Thank you very much. Stacey said, my parents got me a new tablet for Christmas. That's very good. Everyone needs a new tablet. And My Deal Barry says, what do you think about Joe Biden? I'm sorry, that's ridiculous, rigging election votes. What do I think about Joe Biden? I think that he is a tonic compared to the insanity of the previous 4 years. But I also feel like his priorities are wrong. And I don't think infrastructure should have been first. I think voting rights should have been first. I don't think he's doing nearly enough on climate. Hi, Marnie. Thank you for joining us from Florida. I think... And I would like Biden to communicate more, to actually do more like weekly press conferences. That's how I feel. I would like more transparency. Because the thing is, he's doing so many things, and you have to find out about them through your own investigation. I wish he would talk each week up on the pulpit, have an open forum with the media and with the public. Do they call it a town hall, don't they? Let the public ask him questions every week. That's how I think you should run a country. That's just my view. But in terms of, the election, you can't have an election in 2024. It's just not possible. And they'll have to say that. Because to me, that's like the level at which you have to start talking now to make people realize that it's that bad. 41 states have now been rigged in terms of boundary lines, putting in state legislatures, like humans, individuals whose job it is to certify the election in those states. It's basically what they were planning for January 6 that didn't work, the failed coup. They're now applying that rhetoric all around the country in advance. So now they've had 4 years, or they will have had 4 years to plan the next coup, because there's going to be another one. Without a doubt. Yeah, we'll talk about Ron DeSantis in Florida, who's trying to set up his own personal police force. Marnie, you might want to stick around for that if you're in Florida. DeSantis, who openly admitted that he wanted to have his own National Guard who didn't answer to the federal government. Claiming it's for, peacekeeping. Interesting. Elder abuse is spreading, stoked by the pandemic, on the front of the Wall Street Journal. It says the pandemic's impact on older adults went far beyond COVID-19 infections. It also made them more vulnerable to abuse. In Denver, a temporary caregiver on probation for felony robbery was hired to fill a COVID-related staff shortage at a long-term care facility. She stole an engagement ring and credit cards from Barbara Gust, an 86-year-old mother and grandmother who was dying of COVID. A few hours later, after Miss Gust died, the caregiver used one of the cards to make a $2.37 purchase at a local Wendy's restaurant. Goodness me. I mean, if you're that desperate that you need to steal a $2 cheeseburger, I mean, what does that say about the world that we're living in right now? A lot of this has happened. Elder abuse. Spreading, stoked by the pandemic. Seniors fall victim to fraud, physical violence and neglect. Movies failed to lure older audiences. It says A-list stars, rapturous reviews, release strategies, that rely only on the big screen. Even the biggest draws didn't draw audiences out of the house and back into the theatre for many movies in 2021. I mean, would you even go back to the cinema? Marnie says I like to call him Desantis. Ron Desantis. Yeah, very good. Yeah, I've only been to the cinema once since the pandemic started. So once in 2 years I've been to the cinema. And it was very recently to see West Side Story. And I chose a cinema that was going to be empty. And it was empty. There was probably about 12 of us in the whole theatre. It wasn't a huge theatre. It only seated about 60 people. But there was only 12 of us, and we were all spread out. But even so, I wore my mask throughout, you know. I don't know. I didn't eat. I don't understand why people are prepared to get coronavirus so they can have some popcorn. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I really can't sit here for an hour and a half without eating some popped corn and making a lot of noise about it. So I'll just run the risk of getting this deadly virus, take off my mask, and just shovel popcorn into my mouth like it's some kind of horse feed. It's just didn't get it. I didn't eat. I could go for an hour and a half without putting anything in my mouth. It's possible for me. Yeah, the butter popcorn is quite addictive, but I don't really like popcorn because I find that little bit that hasn't popped always gets stuck in my throat. You know, the dark bit that hasn't popped? So it's all very well you hearing people rustling their popcorn in the cinema. You have to listen to me choking on popcorn in the cinema. So I just don't bother. And drinks, who has drinks? I'm not dramatic. This is the reality. And also, you're not going to pay cinema prices for popcorn and drinks, are you? If you want to bring something in, you go to the store down the street, and you just buy it at the regular price, and then you smuggle it in under your jacket. It's very normal behavior. I mean, Raisinets should not be $6. Stacey says, it says that the world doesn't care. About popcorn? I think you're right. A-list stars' rapturous reviews, release strategies that rely only on the big screen. Even the biggest draws didn't draw audiences out of the house and back into the theatre for many movies in 2021. Will Smith's King Richard, Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, and more than a dozen other titles will end the year in a graveyard of disastrous grosses, further calling into question whether studios will continue releasing so many adult-oriented films in the theatre at all. It says the difficulty for such films was highlighted by the seismic success of Spider-Man: No Way Home, which had the second highest opening weekend of all time, with $260 million in the US and Canada earlier this month, and has so far grossed more than $1 billion worldwide. I saw a tweet from Bob Iger, you know, the guy who runs Disney, the CEO of Disney, and he atted the kid who plays Spider-Man. What's his name? Peter Parker. And Tom Holland, is it? Tom Holland. And so it was just like a little personal tweet, and it said, "Hey, Tom Holland, aren't you pleased we had that conversation about doing another Spider-Man movie?" It's like, you know, one conversation between Bob Iger and Tom Holland, and this movie takes $1 billion worldwide on its opening weekend. One conversation. Come on, Tom. I think we should do another Spider-Man movie. I mean, it's a lot of pressure, you know? Funnily enough, I went to the theatre here a couple of years ago, just before the pandemia, and I was in line to get some snacks with the guy who was the former Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire. Yeah, he was in line with me. Very little person, small man, huge star. See? Takes all sorts. It says the result proved moviegoers will still turn out for a superhero movie, even as lower-budget films are heading into the holiday season with little to no traction, as studio chiefs assess what to do with their 2022 slate, and some are already planning to ship even more of their non-tentpole titles to the streaming services, keeping their stock prices afloat. I mean, I would argue that it's actually inappropriate to release any movies in theaters during a pandemic. I mean, if Disney or whoever the picture house is responsible, they should do the right thing and say, okay, no more films. No more films till this is done. Because encouraging $1 billion worth of revenue through the cinema system is also, will be some people who will get sick from that. So, whose responsibility is it? Is it the responsibility of government to say vaccine mandate if you want to go to the cinema? Or is it the responsibility of the cinema not to put the films on? Or is it the responsibility of us as individuals to do the right thing? We shall see. So that's the Wall Street Journal this morning. Thank you very much for that. Marnie says, at the beginning of the pandemic, Wonder Woman was released directly to TV because of the pandemic. That's right, and of course that Black Widow was also... Do you remember that whole scandal with Scarlett Johansson? Did you say Charlotte Johansson? That's so funny. Carla, you're just as bad as me. Scarlett Johansson, who weirdly I used to see on my weekly hike. We used to hike the same canyon together because she lived nearby. So the great thing about living in Hollywood is these people have to hike, they have to go to the theater, they have to do regular things, and you get to see them. And I actually recognized her because of she has a tattoo of flowers or something on her back. And I actually recognized her from behind. It was nothing to do with her bottom. It was all about the tattoos. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, that happened with Black Widow. So Scarlett Johansson, she signed a deal for her movie to be released in the cinema, and she was going to earn money based on box office. And of course, they didn't release it in the cinema. Marvel. They just released it direct to TV on the streaming services. And so she tried to sue them. And they settled out of court, and they paid her an extra $140 million. She can now afford to send someone else to go and hike for her. I mean, and they also said, we look forward to working with you on future movies. If I tried to sue my employer because I didn't think I was getting paid enough, it's very unlikely they would want to settle out of court and say, you know something, looking forward to working with you again. But Scarlett Johansson clearly has a draw, It's very interesting, the money. Oh, by the way, I have a new cushion that I got for Christmas. It was on my wish list. I'm sitting on it now. It's one of these honeycomb cushions. And not only has it raised me up, but it's very comfortable to sit on. I really do feel like a changed man with a new black microphone, a cough box that's not plugged in yet, this new cushion. I'm a changed man. I had a really nice Christmas, actually. I really kind of enjoyed the whole thing, It was good this year. Family in town, it's nice with family. My dear Barry is saying, do you love Media? I don't know what that is. Maybe you could say that again to your device and or type it in again. I don't know how you're communicating with your device, but ask me again and I'll answer the question. Where are we? We're still on the Wall Street Journal. This has literally been on this newspaper now for a long time. Oh, let me turn on the clock. So many things I haven't done this morning. Normally I have this big clock here and I like to kind of look at it and see the time, and it's on now. It's fine. You can relax. Don't worry, the clock's on. Okay, next on the list we have the NYC. I do love the New York Times, don't you? Love the New York Times. Okay, hang on. So many windows, so little time. Here we go. New York Times leads with, to keep schools open, city turns to more testing. Mass quarantines are out, mitigating the disruption for students while battling Omicron. Is it Wednesday today? Yes, it is. Oh, I'm taking my daughter for her second COVID shot today. That's going to be fun. Last time she tried to run out of the clinic. Literally, I had to chase her out of the... grab her. I mean, I hate doing that, having to hold her down. But that's what they do in America. It's so interesting. In England, do you know about this, Carla? I mean, I've not been a parent of young kids in England because my kids grew up here, but I can't imagine England, like, allowing doctors to hold a child down to be vaccinated. But maybe they do. But here, they're just like, hold her down. It's just a bit different. Just getting used to it. It says New York City, home to the nation's largest school system, will eliminate its current policy of quarantining entire classrooms exposed to COVID and will instead use a ramped-up testing program to allow students who test negative for the coronavirus and do not have symptoms to remain in school. Yeah, well, that's all part of the new CDC guidelines, isn't it? Tech giants exploit a tax dodge for startups. It's the story of the incredible cloning tax break, how an incentive to aid small businesses got twisted. And then let's look at this story about Chile. This is very interesting. It says, rarely does a country get a chance to lay out its ideals as a nation and write a new constitution for itself. Almost never does the climate and ecological crisis play a central role. That is until now in Chile, where a national reinvention is underway after months of protests over social and environmental grievances. 155 Chileans have been elected to write a new constitution amid what they have declared a climate and ecological emergency. I mean, this is amazing. This reminds me a little bit of what happened in Iceland. Do you remember what happened in Iceland a few years ago when the entire government was, like, dissolved? And they just said, like, let's start from scratch because you're all crap. I mean, it's easier in a small country. In Iceland, there's only like 700,000 people or something. But I mean, you know, this is kind of similar. I really feel like this is the way it needs to go now. You have to basically dissolve entire constitutions and start over. Oh, that's right. There's a water crisis in Chile. So this is like a two-headed approach to, like, starting over. It says their work will not only shape how the country of 19 million is governed, it will also determine the future of a soft, lustrous metal, lithium, lurking in the salt waters beneath this vast ethereal desert beside the Andes Mountains. Because lithium is at the heart of these new car batteries. And so, you know, if you're going to... and storing of electricity with lithium. So if you're going to transition to an electric vehicle, then there is a percentage of that battery is made from lithium. And yeah, it's not a huge amount. It's not the whole battery, but a percentage of the battery is made of lithium. It says there, it's an essential component of batteries as the global economy seeks alternatives to fossil fuels to slow down climate change. Lithium demand and prices are soaring. Mining companies in Chile, the world's second largest lithium producer after Australia, are keen to increase production, as are politicians who see mining as crucial to national prosperity. They face mounting opposition, though, from Chileans who argue that the country's very economic model, based on extraction of natural resources, has exacted too high an environmental cost and failed to spread the benefits to all citizens, including its indigenous people. I mean, some people argue that it's like one crisis is averted and another is put in its place. And, you know, is the lithium going to run out? lithium is also very toxic. You know, when you mine it, for communities living nearby, lithium is very toxic. And in some places, you know, children are actually being affected by this. Some children are mining for the cobalt that the lithium is, you know, combined with. So they're going to ask the local communities and hopefully give them a say in how this is, you know, how this is managed. It's very interesting, isn't it? It's like I say, it's a problem on top of a problem on top of a problem. And yet it's all seen as a solution. What I'm basically saying is nothing that comes out of the earth should be used to fight climate change. Nothing. Like, they need to work out how to make solar panels without needing... What is the active ingredient in the solar panel? There's some fossil fuel is used in the production of solar panels, isn't it? I forget what it's called. But, you know, there you are. I mean, I am excited about Joe Biden's solar city that he announced a few days ago. Without the social care and climate bill, he's basically worked out that there are elements of that bill that he can put into place immediately without passing that huge bill. And one of them is these turning parts of the desert into giant solar spaces, you know? So solar energy. A bit like Elon Musk has done with Solar City. Musk's in a bit of a situation again right now, isn't he? The Russians accusing him of nearly crashing into one of their satellites and... Oh, man. My adoration for him changes on a day-to-day basis, you know? Sometimes I'm like, yeah, go Elon. And on other days, I'm just like, Elon! No, I don't even know him. So, you know, there it is. Okay, let's move on to something else. Tech giants. Oh, yeah, I've done that one. As Putin airbrushes history, Gulag Chronicler is shut down. This is a very interesting story about, you know, silencing of free speech. Russia's Supreme Court ruled on Tuesday that the nation's most prominent human rights organization must close. I mean, it's almost laughable because it's the fact that it's even allowed to happen. It's not like they're doing it by stealth. It was the Supreme Court ruling that the most prominent human rights organization mustn't not say one thing anymore or needs to, like, be suspended or someone's being fired. Shutting the whole thing down. Signaling President Vladimir Putin's long-standing determination to control the narrative of some of the most painful and repressive chapters of Russian history. The court ordered the liquidation of Memorial International, which chronicled the harrowing persecutions in the infamous Stalin-era labor camps, in an effort to preserve the memory of its victims. The group, founded by the Nobel Peace Prize laureate Andrei Sakharov and other dissidents more than 3 decades ago, became a symbol of the country's emerging democracy after the collapse of the Soviet Union. The decision comes a year after a broad crackdown on opposition in Russia as the Kremlin moved aggressively to stifle dissent in the news media, in religious groups, on social networks, and especially among activists and political opponents, hundreds of whom have been harassed, jailed, or forced into exile. This is, you know, another step in Putin's effort to recast Russia's legacy as a series of glorious accomplishments and soften the image of the often brutal Soviet regime. And yet Donald Trump kept saying that he was great friends with Vladimir Putin. Great friends. Trusts him more than the security services. He said, do you remember that press conference when the security services had advised Trump that Russia had, you know, effectively had a hand in the election rigging of the election, and Trump said, well, yes, the security services may have decided this, but, Mr. Putin is here, and I asked him in our meeting, and he said, no, he didn't. So who am I going to trust? The guy who's standing here or the security services? And everybody at home in unison went, the security services. And in Trump's head, it was like, Mr. Putin. I mean, I have a theory on Trump's relationship with Russia. And the reason that he goes Russia, and deny, this whole thing is because he genuinely doesn't realize that he's been played. He genuinely didn't have and doesn't have the intellect to recognize that he is a Russian mark. They marked him 20 or 30 years ago as an asset, and he has been used as an asset for 30 years, unbeknownst to him. Not a clue. And did they put him in the White House? Well, not directly, but they funded him when he needed to be funded. They promoted him when he needed to be promoted. They supported him when he needed to be supported. And much of it happened without Trump even realizing. Because they're very clever. I mean, don't underestimate the Russians. Putin was a KGB spy, an agent. And the Soviet Union was it was mighty. They were the first people to put a man in space, for goodness sake. So I really do feel like Trump will never, I genuinely think he doesn't realize, he thinks that there was no interference. But, there's a whole dossier written on interference, this one, the dodgy dossier, they called it. It all turned out to be true. It was written by a British agent called Christopher Steele, I seem to remember. And yet, it all turned out to be true. And look at the Russia investigation that was done by my brain this morning. What is his name? The guy who headed the Russia investigation, the former Attorney General. You're probably shouting at your device right now. You definitely know. That whole thing turned out to be true. All that work that was done. And they said to him, is there enough evidence here to indict the president? And he said yes. But they couldn't indict him because he was the president. No, William Barr was the former Attorney General. No, was the current Attorney General when this happened. And William Barr was the guy who got up just before the Russia investigation concluded and actually made a propaganda speech just before it to say that nothing was that Trump wasn't guilty. No. This is such a good game. I do love a game like this. Anyway, it's just very interesting to me that you can be the president and still not realize that you have been played. He was played. The guy was played. And he's still being played. Russia is a very clever country. Really very clever. Let's go to... we've done the New York Times. What's next on the list? We're going to Connecticut. Not Rob Rosenstein. No, he was the assistant. I love this game. Let's see if somebody has messaged. Stacey, do you know who it was? Can you remember? He had the third on the end of his name. There was 3 of him. I don't know. Stacey says, can you tell me what time it is? Well, it's 9:49 here on the West Coast. So it must be 12:49 for you. 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah. 12:49. It's 11 minutes. It's now 10 minutes to 1. Paul, thank you for joining from Ireland. Paul, are you really in Ireland? This is wonderful. 10-6 in Ireland. Yeah, but it was Stacey that wanted to know the time, and I think she's on the East Coast. I mean, Paul, it's 10-6. Is there no time difference between England and Ireland? Nothing. No. Be nice if there was. I've only been to Ireland once. I went to Dublin, and I was very impressed, but it rained. And there's nothing worse than going somewhere, just one time and your memory of it just being wet and cold. But that's Ireland, apparently, So that was like and I've spent a lot of time in Scotland, and I've had some good weather in Scotland, which is weird because it really does rain all the time in Scotland. And it's going to get worse, because Scotland is like my emergency, fail-safe, nuclear holocaust place to live. Did you know this, Carla? Like, it's where I want to head for. I don't quite know why, other than the fact that it's beautiful and affordable and relatively safe. It's relatively safe. And isn't it worrying that we're living in a time now where we have to identify a country or a city that is relatively safe? Safe from climate change, safe from terrorism, safe from political unrest and social disorder. Yeah, I've definitely got a panic bag. Are you kidding me? Of course I have. I have a pair of boots next to my bed. In my panic bag is passports. I have a solar charger for 2 USBs that folds out, so it's that much solar, and it will basically charge devices with the power of the sun. Paperwork, certificates, and things. And then I have a box of emergency earthquake food that will last maybe 10 years. Has pasta sauce, has cans of stuff, energy bars. That's all packed in a box. And then I have water supplies in big bottles. Well, because we're living in an earthquake zone, and that's what you have to do. You've got to have your go bag. The government talk about it. The state talks about it. Got to have a go bag. And you've got to have a pair of boots next to your bed, because if there's an earthquake and the glass breaks and there's glass on the floor and you're in bed, you've got to be able to put your feet straight into some shoes. Unfortunately, this is the reality, isn't it? This is where we're living now. We're living in this world. This insane world where we have to make these, we have to make these decisions. Anyway, Paul, thank you for joining us from Ireland. It'd be great to know where in Ireland you are. The Hartford Courant, which is our next newspaper. Oh, okay, yes, there was this NFL announcer who has just died, John Madden, the Hall of Fame coach who became the America's most recognizable ambassador of professional football, reaching millions and generations from broadcast booth and through the popular video game that bears his name. Died on Tuesday. He was 85. It says the National Football League announced his death in a statement that didn't include the cause. In his irrepressible way and with a distinctive voice, Madden left an imprint on the sport on a par with titans like George Halas, Paul Brown, and his coaching idol, Vince Lombardi. Madden's influence, steeped in everyman's sensibilities and studied with wild gesticulations and paroxysms of onomatopia. I mean, it's too early in the morning for me to do this stuff. I'm more of a late night guy. Wham, doink, whoosh made the NFL more interesting, more relevant, and more fun for over 40 years. So there he is. And a great photo of him coaching in 1970. He later won a Super Bowl with the Raiders before moving into television. I do love the fact that, sports announcers are often former players or coaches, and it makes. I really believe, if you're going to do commentary on these types of things, you really have to be an expert, like really have first-hand experience. It makes such a difference. Yeah, it is a great skill. Okay, we're going to Connecticut now. The Hartford Courant is testing chaos boiling over. Oh no. Gun threat prompts early closure of overwhelmed virus testing location from Bristol City Hall. State struggling with surging demand and not enough tests amid an increase in Omicron cases. I mean, I don't know what to say other than that this is the reality now, isn't it? There's going to be... Everyone's going to get this, and then they're going to want to blame someone. Because even vaccinated people are getting it. And they're going to be like, what was the point in getting vaccinated? I think Fauci he's really... I mean, I'm amazed he's still going, really. It's a lot of work for a man of his age. It's a lot of work. He must be exhausted. He said he hasn't had a decent night's sleep in years. Frustration and confusion reached a boiling point on Tuesday afternoon after a gun threat at an overwhelmed COVID-19 testing site in Bristol, prompting officials to shut down testing operations and leaving hundreds of people without tests and unsure of who to blame. Vehicles filled up 2 large commuter lots located across from Bristol City Hall and the police department, with several more at one point wrapping around into the North Main Street. At the front of the line was a single small white trailer staffed by just 3 people. According to Bristol police, a person waiting for a test called the headquarters of Genesis Diagnostics and threatened to take out their gun and start shooting if the line didn't move more quickly. Wow. I mean, wow, America really is the Wild West. I don't know that I really want to go to anything anymore that is like a group activity, Record positivity, latest sign of surge. Nearly 1,000 in hospital as Lamont vows to send at-home tests. Yeah. I've been stockpiling at-home tests. Whenever I've had a chance to go to a pharmacy and they've got one, you're not allowed to buy more than 2 at a time. Although, weirdly, Walmart's let me buy 6 packs and then quickly sold out. And I'm thinking, online. I bought them from Walmart online. And it's like, no wonder they sold out. They let me buy 6 packs. But, I have like a whole family in town. So I've got like 8 people, 10 people to test. But there's just no system here. There's no system for healthcare. It just doesn't exist. And this is the reason why America has more cases than anywhere else, is because there is no healthcare system. So when people talk about the American healthcare system, I'm like, there isn't one. In the same way when people say, oh, well, what about the election in 2024? I'll say, there can't be one. This is like my new attitude to these things. Like, if you want people to actually notice something, you have to draw a line in the sand and say, this is the reality. And the reality is there is no US healthcare system. There is US healthcare if you're prepared to pay for it, but there's no system. As Connecticut scrambles to respond to the surging Omicron outbreak, municipal leaders across the state were preparing to work with the National Guard to distribute free COVID-19 test kits starting on Thursday. Communities on Tuesday were still working out exactly how to distribute thousands of kits supplied by the state and paid for by the federal government. Some expect to start handing them out on Thursday afternoon. Others, like West Hartford and Weatherfield, still wait until Friday. Still, others, including New Britain and Hartford, are looking towards early next week. Yeah, Joe Biden has promised 500 million free tests for a country of 361 million people. So you'll get like 1.4 tests each. I've only got half a test here. yeah, there's not enough. Hector's in New York. Hello, Hector. Thank you for joining. Backchannel. It's 10 o'clock. Should we try the US news update, seeing as it's that time? You know, it's halfway through the show. I also do this podcast, which is a daily podcast all about the news. We're going to listen to it now, and you'll be able to download it from wherever you get your podcasts, basically. It's a nice little daily introduction into what's happening across America. So, here it is.
It's Wednesday, December 29. From the Volley Network, this is your daily US news update. I'm Anthony Davis. US health officials' decision to shorten the recommended COVID-19 isolation and quarantine period from 10 to 5 days is drawing criticism from some medical experts and could create more confusion and fear among Americans. To the dismay of some authorities, the new guidelines allow people to leave isolation without getting tested to see if they're still infectious. The guidance has raised questions about how it was crafted and why it was changed now, in the middle of another wintertime spike in cases, this one driven largely by the highly contagious Omicron variant. Monday's action by the CDC cut in half the recommended isolation time for Americans who are infected with the coronavirus but have no symptoms. The CDC similarly shortened the amount of time people who have come into close contact with an infected person needs to quarantine. The CDC has been under pressure from the public and the private sector, including the airline industry, to shorten the isolation time and reduce the risk of severe staffing shortages amid the Omicron surge. Thousands of flights have been cancelled over the past few days in a mess blamed on Omicron. Louis Mansky, director of the Institute for Molecular Virology at the University of Minnesota, agreed there is a scientific basis to the CDC's recommendations. But other experts questioned why the CDC guidelines allow people to leave isolation without testing. Your daily US news update is part of the Volley Network. To hear my live daily morning show, ask your Amazon Echo device to open Backchannel.
Welcome back. We're back. Yes, the show returns. I've plugged in the cough block. Look, it's now plugged in. So I'm going to press it, and maybe you can tell me if it goes quiet. It seems to work. But can you hear a click? Could you hear anything? No? A vague little click, maybe? I'll try. Okay, here I go. I'm going to cough. 1, 2, 3. There you go. Would you have known? Unbelievable. It's like magic. The cough blocks, it's called. It's got a little bit of a hum on it, though. I might have to buy another wire. There you go, just testing. Wonderful. See, we're in business. We are in business. 3 minutes after 10 on the West Coast. This is Backchannel. If you want to get in touch, you just use backchannel.tv. You can chat there, or you can go via your Amazon Echo device. Just say the word "say" and then your message after your activation word, of course, whatever that is. Could be Echo, or could be the other one, which I'm not likely to say anytime soon. New CDC guidelines draw criticism. Also on the front of the Hartford Courant this morning, it says U.S. health officials' decision to shorten the recommended COVID-19 isolation and quarantine period from 10 days to 5 is drawing criticism from some medical experts and could create more confusion and fear among Americans. It says, to the dismay of some authorities, the new guidelines allow people to leave isolation without getting tested to see if they're still infectious. The guidance has raised questions about how it was crafted and why it was changed now, in the middle of another wintertime spike in cases, this one driven largely by the highly contagious Omicron variant. Yeah, this is kind of worrying, isn't it? We're in a situation now, aren't we, where people are getting sick. Wow, just use the cough blocks. Worked a treat. It's amazing. I genuinely I probably got the onset of some coronavirus, I don't doubt. And I've tried to be safe, but I'm convinced that this variant everyone is going to get. And it's so transmissible. It's like hard to describe how transmissible this is. Cases here in California have increased 450% in the last week. 450% in Los Angeles. Yeah, that's true. I survived. Isn't it amazing that I managed to get to Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, and back without getting coronavirus? But that was just before Omicron kind of became the dominant strain. Just before. Got very lucky. But, you know, now I have elderly relatives here in the US, and I really don't want them to get sick. Well, I think they've had AstraZeneca. What is the... AstraZeneca is the British, Oxford University vaccine. I wonder what the efficacy is for Omicron from AstraZeneca. I've not really heard much about it because it's not been authorized in the US. Anyway. CDC officials said the guidance in keeping with growing evidence that people with the virus are most infectious in the first few days. The CDC has been under pressure from the public and the private sector, including the airline industry, to shorten isolation time and reduce the risk of severe staffing shortages amid the Omicron surge. Thousands of flights have been cancelled over the past few days, creating a mess blamed on Omicron. Well, this is actually the main issue, isn't it? That people are more worried about aeroplanes and flights being cancelled than they are about anything else. That's really my concern. So, yeah, it's a record positivity rate. It's happening everywhere. This paper is from Connecticut, but it's happening all over the country. Nobody seems to be spared from this. And the change to reduce isolation periods has followed fresh data on coronavirus transmission. We're going to go to Fresno now, the Fresno Bee. They lead with at-home COVID-19 rapid tests in short supply in region. It says the stubborn Delta variant of COVID-19 since late summer and the rapid march of the highly contagious Omicron variant over the past month are creating a surge in demand for at-home rapid test kits for coronavirus. In Fresno on Monday, spot checks for half a dozen stores from national pharmacy chains and major retailers revealed that no at-home test kits were to be found. Most had been sold out for 1 to 2 weeks, and there was no certainty about when more would arrive to meet local demand. Isn't it interesting how, why do you think it is that now people have suddenly become so interested in at-home testing? Why is that suddenly the thing? Is it because so many more people are unwell? Is that the reason that so many more people are getting infected? Or is it that the guidance is test at home? Because for me, the problem with the at-home testing is that there's very little, if not no way, of reporting your results to the state. Certainly on the rapid tests that I've used, there's no QR code or any way to kind of report your results. On one of the tests there is, but you have to download an app and it's a whole deal. But I feel like if you don't have a positive result, if you're negative, then you probably don't need to report a negative. But if you're positive, then people are more likely then to seek out a PCR test to get a confirmation of their positive result. So, what are we looking at with this? We're looking at millions of people potentially who are testing positive and not reporting the result if they're testing at home, which means that Omicron is probably far more transmissible than we're giving it credit for. I find it very interesting. I also am very worried about it, unless there is some truth, and I need to read up more because I don't like to spread misinformation, but I need to read up more. But I am also concerned that we are now looking at an illness that could potentially burn itself out. Because if everyone's going to get Omicron, then the virus can't mutate or doesn't have any subjects to mutate in, and therefore potentially could burn itself out. And then, of course, there's these 89 cruise ships. You've probably heard about these too. Oh my goodness me. I mean, this is such a big deal. You know that there are literally like 500 ships now cruising around the world. These giant ships. 500 of them. Maybe more now. It says the US CDC and the US CDC identified 89 ships with COVID-19 cases on Tuesday, nearly all of which have met the threshold for a formal investigation. Richard Blumenthal, Democratic US Senator, urged cruise companies and health agencies to stop ships from sailing, saying they are repeating recent history as petri dishes of COVID infection. Operators such as Carnival have implemented safeguards, including mandatory masking and proof of vaccination, but the fast-spreading Omicron variant has triggered an increasing number of infections and reports of ships being turned away at ports. Time for CDC and cruise lines to protect consumers and again pause docking their ships, Blumenthal said. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? This is going to ravage the world, this strain, because it is so transmissible. You know, with Delta, you basically had to sneeze in someone's face. With this thing, air kisses, and you've got it. And I'm now actually genuinely worried about getting it. Because, you know, I'm very risk averse, but I also am exposed because it's airborne. It's very interesting to me. There's a lot here to consider. So maybe we just have to accept the fact that we're going to get it. It's going to last 3 to 5 days, maybe a week at most. We'll get better. We'll feel terrible for a couple of weeks. I mean, my brother still has he's tested negative several times, but he still feels pretty terrible. This is the reality of COVID-19. It's a highly evolved and intelligent virus. And it's trying to wipe us out. That's its intention. I've always been of this view, that it's come from nature. Do you not know this theory, Carla? My view is that COVID-19 was like a necessary virus to wipe out the human race because we've done too much damage to this planet. And it's only because we have vaccines, and it's only because we have masks and wipes and all these various tools at our disposal that we are able to overcome it. But I do feel like it's the planet talking back to us. I feel like humans have outstayed their welcome. Digging for oil and gas and cobalt mining and using up all of these precious resources that the planet needs to survive. I feel like the planet has spoken. And it's like, okay, humans, you had your chance. Done. Think about it. I mean, we're all animals. We're just animals. We're not superior. We share the planet with the animal kingdom. We share the planet with the bats. We share the planet with all of these creatures. Yes, we're more evolved and intelligent, but it doesn't make us any more important. There's not more humans than there are rats. I think humans have a superiority complex. And I feel like that if we were not so evolved, let's say like the Spanish flu of 1918, you know, that how many people did that kill? Was it 1 million people or was it more? I forget. Because coronavirus has killed 2 million people, and that's with vaccines, and that's with therapeutics, and that's with PPE. And 100 years ago, they did not have the resources that we have. but still humans survived. So is this the planet talking back to us and being like, you know, you can't keep digging for oil and using up resources and thinking that you can continue to live on this planet. You know, we're not even part of the ecosystem and the food chain like we used to be. We're just destructive. You know, we are a destructive race. If we're not killing the planet, we're killing each other. I just wish we could be a little more thoughtful. I wish we could use and harvest the power of the sun for solar without having to use some kind of fossil fuel to harvest that solar. I wish we could drive cars without emissions without having to use lithium. Can you look up how many people died in 1918? I really feel like I'd be very interested to know, because I think it's around 2 million now, you know, from coronavirus. But from Spanish flu, it'd be interesting to know how that spread. I mean, remember in 1918 they didn't have air travel like we have now, and really that's the thing that's the biggest difference, is without air travel, because we have taken coronavirus around the world with our international recreational flying. We shouldn't be flying. Eric, thank you for joining us from Pennsylvania. Hector's here, Stacy, Niall, Paul. Thank you for spending your morning with Backchannel. It's 10:17 on the West Coast, the 29th of December. I'm Anthony Davis. 50 million people died with Spanish flu. Oh, wow, that's interesting. And that was without air travel. Wow, that's quite something. That's a lot of people. Yeah, what a terrible time to be alive. The odds of survival. The First World War followed by the Spanish flu. You'd be like, seriously? Haven't we suffered enough? So, the cruise ships is very interesting. I have a friend on one of the new Virgin ships at the moment. I'm a bit of a cruise ship fan. You know, I have a whole, other hobby. Carla's reprimanding me now for liking cruise ships. If I'm allowed to explain, then, I'll explain. So do you know the difference between a cruise ship and an ocean liner? Do you know the difference? Can I explain? An ocean liner is built from the outside in, and a cruise ship's built from the inside out. And so my interest is traveling between Europe and America and not flying. That's my interest. And I've done it multiple times. I've come to New York from Southampton and cross the Atlantic, and it takes a week. You know, if they put their foot down and burn a lot of diesel, they can do it in 4 days. But they go slow to save on fuel, and so it takes a week, 7 days. And I've done it several times. And it all goes back to recreating the days of international travel before the commercial aircraft. Because aviation is very polluting. It's very bad for the environment. Now, ships are not great for the environment, but they're getting better. They're getting better. They convert seawater into drinking water. It's quite interesting. And then the wastewater, like toilet water, they then convert that into grey water to use to wash the decks. It's like a little mini city that, it's like self-fulfilling. But it does run on diesel electric. Carla just looked up the worst year to be alive was year 536. That was a terrible year. Terrible year. What was it? Was it like, I guess it was leprosy and you know, various illnesses that just famine, yeah, pestilence, locusts. I mean, that does not seem like a good time to be alive. I mean, I actually think now, certainly in my lifetime, but maybe in the last 100 or 200 years, I would say now is probably the worst time. Like worse than World War II. And just, yeah, I believe that. I've had this is a very philosophical conversation. I've had this with a few people recently. I said, is now a worse time to be alive than the Second World War? And I've concluded, yes, it is. It is. You've got used to this, Carla. You've got used to this way of life now. But the way that we operate now, some people are lucky, you know. I feel I'm quite blessed in many ways because I live quite an isolated life anyway. I work in this confined space. I don't have colleagues that I meet face to face. It's like, you know, but if you have to work on the front line, Ron, welcome from North Carolina. Thank you for joining Backchannel. If you work with people face to face, then, you know, you run the risk of being sick. And in America, there's no welfare or support or backup systems like there is in much of the rest of the world. You know, in England, where I'm from, you can live on unemployment for your whole life. And it pays your rent, and it pays your bills, and then it pays you a cash sum every week on top. And it's normal. It's considered normal. Because we recognize the fact that not everybody is equipped physically, emotionally, mentally, educationally, if that's even a word. You know, not everybody is dealt a good hand. And so many countries have a welfare state that is designed to support these people. Okay, let's move on. So that was the Fresno Bee. They're having record-breaking Sierra snow, burying towns and closing highways in Fresno, in California. Unbelievable. The Modesto Bee this morning, they also have a story about almond growers. It says almond growers from Stanislaus County will promote the food far and wide. Will promote the food far and wide via the tournament of the Roses Parade. Wow. This sounds like a paid promotion, doesn't it? Blue Diamond Growers once again has a float in the nationally televised event on New Year's Day in Pasadena. The parade will also include the Merced County Sheriff Posse, one of the equestrian entries, and a music teacher from Winton marching in a 270-member band. I mean, I'm just sad that I can't be there. It sounds like a super spreader event on a level that I can't even imagine. The 133rd annual parade will start at 8 a.m. on Saturday. It'll air live on ABC, NBC, Univision, the Hallmark Channel, and RFD TV. Don't miss it. The Rose Parade. There it is. Okay, next, the Florida Times Union. If you're in Florida right now, then this is for you. Weavers donate $2 million to school. Endowment praised as an amazing opportunity. It's a lot of wealthy people in Florida. Latinx ID met with acclaim and derision. It says Andres Acosta hasn't seen his Colombian great aunt in 3 years, so when she posted a graphic on Facebook that explained the term Latinx, a gender-neutral term for those of Hispanic or Latin American descent, it was a small but meaningful way to affirm the LGBTQ community, his community. That small letter X was a symbol of allyship. Even though the pandemic has kept them apart, it was a sign that she cares. He said if she's willing to adopt something new as someone in old age, then what's stopping the rest of us from giving it a chance? Lovely, right? Lovely. Is a story about Florida's boaters and environmentalists at odds over manatees' future. Yeah, the whole manatee story has become a huge thing here, certainly on the Florida coast. 40 years since saving the manatees first became a refrain that appeared on T-shirts and vanity license plates, no two people have come to personify the acrimonious debate over the manatee's future in Florida and how best to preserve it. Okay, let's move on. The Orlando Sentinel is next. They lead with new CDC guidelines raise more questions. Agency says change on isolation follows data on transmission. Yeah, I don't actually believe that, and I've said this at the beginning of the program. When I first heard that they were changing the isolation time from 10 days to 5 days, I was like, that's for the economy. That is an economic decision to protect corporate America. That is despite the fact that we have a democratic government now, federal government, that is the corporate America, probably the airlines, leaning on the White House and saying, you need to cut us a little bit of slack here because we can't get people to come to work. And if people can't come to work, we have no crew, we have no pilots, we have no ground crew, we have no, people because it's people that keep planes in the sky, not the planes. The planes can't do anything on their own. And there's so much money at stake. And I just think that Fauci and people like this were kind of just, given no option. And now I also believe we're getting into a situation where they're going to start making public policy decisions based on what is best for vaccinated people. Think about that for a moment. Like this decision to reduce from 10 days to 5 days is only really helpful if you're vaccinated. So public health decisions are going to be based on people who have done the right thing by getting vaccinated, triple vaccinated. I mean, in Israel, they're on to the 4th vaccine now because, of course, they started before anybody else. But I do recognize that you can't make policy if people are not following government guidelines. And government guidelines are go get vaccinated. But as I said on the program last week, if people now who are unvaccinated still, after having vaccines since January this year, if people are still unvaccinated, they are now 7 months behind everybody else because they still need to get their first vaccine. Then they have to wait 4 weeks to get their second vaccine. Then they're fully vaccinated by old standards. And then you have to wait 6 months before your booster. And then you have to wait a week after your booster or 2 weeks after your booster for it to be fully active in your system. So you're over 7 months behind everybody else if you're deciding to get vaccinated now. And Omicron is raging. That's my concern. And that's why hospitals are filling up. They're not filling up with vaccinated people. Mayor blasts Desantis expands COVID testing. It says, this is on the Orlando Sentinel. It says, as COVID-19 infections surge and residents face hours-long waits for testing, Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings blasted Governor Ron DeSantis on Tuesday about the state's lack of support during the Omicron variant wave. Demings also announced the opening of a new testing site, though a health official conceded the third site won't meet demand, and reinstated a mask mandate for country employees at work. In all, 80 are out of work with COVID-19 diagnosis. We've not received any assistance from the state of Florida at our testing sites, Demings said. All Florida residents should be outraged. Where is Ron DeSantis now? Demings noted the state once had COVID testing sites throughout the region, which helped relieve the burden on local governments, and also questioned why the governor hasn't held a recent briefing on the virus. Desantis last spoke about COVID on the 17th of December. I'm telling you, this decision by Republican governors to pretend that coronavirus is a personal choice, right, is going to backfire. It's going to backfire. Luminar tech founder devotes $70 million for new charitable fund. That's nice, isn't it? I do think it's nice when very young people come into great riches, like through tech, and then donate a portion of their wealth because, they don't need it. They don't need it. When you're 26, all you need is a skateboard and a Walkman. I'm sure there's a tax efficiency connected to this. Austin Russell, the 26-year-old Orlando tech genius and billionaire, is plunging into the philanthropy sector with a personal donation of $70 million in stock to create a charitable fund in Central Florida, though it has yet to be determined how the money will be spent. This may be the biggest gift ever made in Orlando, said Mark Brewer, president and CEO of the Central Florida Foundation, the non-profit institution partnering with Russell to set up the fund and decide how to use it. Oh, I wouldn't go that far. That's more of a conspiracy. I can't entertain that. Expect more private rocket companies on Space Coast. It says while SpaceX and United Launch Alliance have been sending rockets up at an increased pace the past several years, the Space Coast is about to get much busier with more commercial rockets set to join the launch party. The first half of 2022 is slated to see 2 companies launch for the first time from Cape Canaveral, 2 older launch complexes, while some massive new rockets are waiting on the new engines in the hope of lifting off before the end of the year. Interesting. For one company, Relativity Space, based in Long Beach, California, its first planned launch from Space Launch Complex 16 will be its first liftoff ever. Its rockets are fabricated using 3D printing technology and are projected to take as little as 30 days to create, from the nose cone to the engine. Wow. I mean, 3D printing, I worry about it in some ways because it's being used to make, ghost guns and the like. But I also think that it could be the future of everything, especially house building. I have a morbid curiosity about modular house building using modern, eco-friendly products to build homes quickly for people. Because, there's a housing crisis, a housing shortage. And I really feel like, you show up to a lot with a 3D printer, or you build it off-site and then you bring it in. And you should be able to build a modular house or a 3D printed house in a matter of days, under a week. Should be happening all over. Let's take a look at the Tampa Bay Times, because it's one of those newspapers that's always got something on offer. Let's have a look. Let's see if I can find it. Florida Times. Did you email it to me? Oh, no, it's here. It's here. Okay, the Tampa Bay Times. I have it. Victims trapped with abusers. Some use COVID-19 to tighten their control and ramp up criminal behavior. Needle Exchange saves Tampa lives. It says Idea Exchange, Tampa's program, is designed to reduce the chance of HIV and hepatitis C, costly lifelong illnesses. And also 2021 has been a banner year for space exploits. Bless you, Carla. Bless you. Yes, the year 2021 will probably go down in the annals of space history as a turning point, a moment when ordinary citizens started leaving Earth on a regular basis. Multiple crews lifted off on several different spacecraft, and for a brief moment this month, there was a record 19 people in the weightless environment of space, and 8 of them were private citizens. It says, but for all the achievements of 2021, which include a rover landing on Mars, a small drone called Ingenuity flying in that planet's thin atmosphere, and the launch yesterday of the James Webb Space Telescope, the most powerful space telescope ever, 2022 could hold just as much promise, if not more. I don't know about all this. I mean, it's a bit of an age-old argument, isn't it? You know, it's a bit of an age-old argument for and against space exploration. You know, is space research a waste of time? Is it necessary? Are you for or against it? Does space fascinate you? Or are you repelled by the idea? And maybe your position has changed in recent years with space tourism and the kind. Do you want to hate it, but it's kind of cool? Because, you know, that's right. Isn't it a song rather than a poem? That Gil Scott-Heron thing. Maybe it's like a speak-sing. It's a speak-sing. Yeah. I can't recite it. I can't remember it. But let's just say this. Here's the age-old argument about space exploration, and it is as follows. Why go to space and waste all that money when we have so many problems here on Earth? Right? That's the age-old argument, isn't it? Now, that's right, the Gil Scott-Heron song. I can't pay these doctor bills, but something's on the moon? Yeah. I mean, this is where we're at, isn't it? And it's particularly pronounced during a pandemic. I mean, maybe they should have just held off from doing any space exploration during a pandemic when people are losing their friends and family at a rate of knots. I mean, that's really the biggest issue, isn't it? And also, you know, poverty is just rife here on Earth. And yet we're kind of... I must feel like... Darren, thank you for joining us, by the way, in Colorado. Eric's in Pennsylvania. Stacy's incognito. I kind of feel like the timing is really important for space exploration. I mean, you know, think about the Apollo 11 mission, you know, all the Apollo missions that took place during the Cold War. It was a race between America and Russia, and the timing of landing Neil Armstrong on the moon, you know, all that stuff was like quite important for making a point that humanity had advanced so much up until then. And yet, now, we've kind of advanced as much as we're going to advance in some ways. You know, they say that, yeah, things will get better, battery technology will improve, but in terms of our evolution, we've kind of come a very long way. Much further than they had in the 1960s during the moon landings. So maybe it's enough already. I mean, what do you want to know? That we are floating in an infinite galaxy? It's infinite. And the whole thing is a happy accident. That's my view. This whole creation, the solar system, these far-off galaxies, the Milky Way, the Snickers, I mean, all of it is a happy accident. I'm very happy with that explanation. So what else do you want to know? Why do you want to know about extraterrestrial activity? Why is it that important? I mean, really, the only planets we're able to study in any great detail are the ones in our solar system. The rest are too far away. But you see, the authorities argue, and the philanthropists and the people that fund these types of missions, they argue that the funds used on space exploration would not be available for solving world poverty, or the housing crisis, or the pandemic. Do you see what I mean? It's like The money allocation is sent, it's raised and it's made available simply because it's space exploration. That money would not be otherwise available because homelessness is not sexy, but space exploration is. If 2021 was the year of the private space tourist, 2022 could be marked by the first steps towards a return to the moon, as NASA and the growing space industry maintain the momentum that has been building over the past several years in what has amounted to a renaissance of exploration. A pair of massive rockets, both more powerful than the Saturn V that flew the Apollo astronauts to the moon, are getting ready to fly in 2022. Those launches would mark the first significant steps in NASA's Artemis program, which aims to return astronauts to the moon. That was all Trump's thing, wasn't it? Like wanting to send people back to the moon. Why? Why go back to the moon? It's a human thing, isn't it? It's this kind of human desire to explore. It's what Captain Kirk says in the opening credits to every episode of Star Trek. It's to boldly go where no man has gone before, or woman, and women stand. And really, this is the point. We are an inquisitive race. We desire and seek out adventure. Well, they do. I don't. Very happy just sitting here and having little snacks. And that's really the point, isn't it, about humanity, is that we have these huge lows and these great highs. And there's always been poverty, and there's always been disease, and there's always been hunger, and there's always been a need to support the poorest on this planet. And the juxtaposition is this desire by people who are in science and who have wealth to fund and study the space above our heads. And in 2022, NASA plans to turn its gaze back to the moon. And is it that they're planning to move somewhere else, get off this crazy planet? Or is it that it's just a bit of fun? I don't know. I mean, it's better than having a job, I guess. I see anybody that works in space exploration as just like, kind of having fun. I don't really see that as work, as in contributing to the economy. Because I don't see how it can affect regular people. I just can't see the connection between... Well, yeah, but there are ways to grow tomatoes here instead of importing tomatoes here. Do you see what I mean? It's like, England does it where I'm from. The climate is so bad. On the south coast of England, they've built these giant greenhouses. They're huge. So they can grow the fruit and vegetables that they were importing from Eastern Europe. They grow it locally. Have you seen these, Carla? Gigantic. They're tents. And now they are farming in these heated tents. This like intensive farming of vegetables so that they don't have to go abroad for them. Huge facilities now. Because, I used to be sick of buying blueberries in London and they would say imported from Poland. But, that's the global economy, isn't it? I struggle to connect space exploration with poverty on Earth. I don't see how one benefits the other. I just... Potatoes in Ireland from Egypt, Carla saw. But it's a bit like... Do you remember we did a story the other week about Japan, McDonald's in Japan running out of French fries? And the reason they couldn't deliver French fries is because the potatoes came from thousands of miles away. The potatoes that they used. And I was like, it's just potatoes. But it isn't potatoes, because actually those French fries are full of maize. If you look at the ingredients of McDonald's French fries, it's maize more than potato. And so in order to make these French fries, they need to do it in a facility. So they obviously need a certain type of potato to combine with the maize and the vegetable fat to make these delicious, because they are delicious. Nobody's questioning how flavorful they are. But that's why there's a supply chain issue, is because they're not growing local potatoes and actually using 100% potato in a French fry. There's all other ingredients. It's tragic. Let's quickly look at this story about Ron Desantis, the everybody's favorite person. Here we go. This is very interesting. This is an article about Florida Governor Ron Desantis. 10 things that he wants in the 2022 legislative session. It says he recently released a $99.7 billion budget blueprint for the 2022 session and has touted a series of other proposals. Here are 10 of DeSantis' priorities, big and small, for the annual 60-day meeting of lawmakers. This year's session starts on the 11th of January. Cryptocurrency. He has requested $700,000 for cryptocurrency projects at the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. A pilot program would allow people to pay for motor vehicle certificates through blockchain technology at the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. Unbelievable. He's also requesting elections enforcement, $5.7 million for a 52-person office of election crimes and security within the Department of State to investigate and prosecute election-related crimes. There are no election crimes. They don't exist. They made them up. State Guard. He's requested $5.4 million to re-establish a 200-member Florida State Guard, which was a defense force set up during World War II to replace the Florida National Guard members who were deployed abroad. It would be used to assist the National Guard during emergencies. Yeah, I've got news for you. It would be used to help the 52-person office at the Election Crimes and Security Department. That's what those people are going to do. He wants a Freedom Tower, $25 million to restore Miami's Freedom Tower, which was used in the past to process Cuban refugees. Legislative proposals have already been filed for the work on the nearly 100-year-old building. He wants a gasoline tax cut to suspend the state's 25 cents a gallon tax on gasoline for 5 months. Lovely. What a lovely thing to do during climate crisis. He wants to keep police, increase pay for officers at the Florida Highway Patrol, and provide a second round of $1,000 bonuses for first responders, and provide $5,000 to help recruit law enforcement officers to Florida. Yes, and hope that they vote for him as well. That's what that is. That's a pay for votes. And he wants also $8 million to crack down on immigration, to transport undocumented immigrants out of state, while calling on legislators to expand a 2019 law targeting so-called sanctuary cities and a 2020 law that requires all government employers and some contractors to use a federal electronic system known as E-Verify to check the immigration status of new workers. Lovely. What a lovely thing to do. He wants $3 million as part of the state's efforts to remove Burmese pythons. He wants $238 million in federal stimulus money to give a second round of $1,000 bonuses to teachers and principals in an effort to retain educators. And he wants to spend $15 million to carry out a plan that would replace the statewide standardized tests, known as the Florida Standards Assessments, with a progress monitoring system. There you go. Ron DeSantis. A man for all the people. None of the time. Okay, listen, we've only got 5 minutes left. Why don't we talk about Archbishop Desmond Tutu? Because he really was the of all of the deaths. I know Harry Reid died yesterday, but of all of the deaths, the Christmas deaths, this is really he's really for me the saddest loss for me personally. He was a social rights activist. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1983 for his work fighting apartheid in South Africa. He was the first Anglican bishop of Cape Town. He chaired the Truth and Reconciliation Commission during the 1990s, which helped victims of apartheid speak out and seek justice. He was born in Klerksdorp in Transvaal. When Tutu was 12, he moved with his family to Johannesburg. He wanted to become a doctor. His family could not afford to send him to medical school, so he studied at the Pretoria Bantu Normal College to become a teacher. And he taught at the high school there. And he got married in 1955. And he moved in 1975 into what is now known as Tutu House in Soweto. He died day before yesterday at a medical centre in Cape Town. Well, on the 26th, day after Christmas Day, at the age of 90. And, I mean, the thing that I feel the most about him was he was a presence on British television throughout my childhood and adult life. You know, he was always there. It was always like, what does Tutu think? And he was travelling, always constantly travelling. And so he'd come to England all the time. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder if Americans have had as much exposure to Archbishop Desmond Tutu as I have. Because this is a guy from South Africa. And he's a religious person. I'm not a religious person, but I've always respected him enormously. And I would literally take whatever he says as the gospel because I have so much respect for him. And I'm not a religious person. And yet America, which is a very religious country, unlike England, is possibly less likely to have even heard of him. Now, geographically, I appreciate that South Africa is closer to England, but not that much, as the crow flies. South Africa is probably closer to Florida. So, I just was wondering if you as an American had ever really connected with Archbishop Desmond Tutu, really thought about his impact on civil rights, social rights, and as a spiritual leader. Because it's a great loss to the people of South Africa and Africa as a whole. But the thing about him, more than anything, was the infectious laugh and warmth. And maybe that's the problem with our ability to not connect, or our inability to connect with people who are of faith, is that sometimes there is not enough joy in the presentation, in the communication. And so I just kind of feel like Tutu was like a man for all seasons, He was so inquisitive, he took so much interest in people. And it's almost like he didn't put Christianity first, Especially the Anglican Church. You didn't feel like that was like his priority. His priority was people. The church and theology was his grounding. But that wasn't, I'm sure he prayed daily, but I don't think he didn't push that on people. What he did was bring people together through this very mutual respect of all humans, no matter what their race, no matter what their religion. And that's what we need more of in this world, isn't it? That's kind of what we're missing. And unfortunately, Christianity now has been hijacked by nationalism and the far right. This hatred of immigrants, and that's that's this new version of evangelical Christianity in America. We need more Desmond Tutus, I think. My deal Berry, thank you for joining us from Alabama. You've been wonderful. I've been Anthony Davis. Stay with Backchannel for your pal Hal. He's next. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye for now.